What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. And as you can tell, I've done some house cleaning myself. Wires look good. Joe came over here and helped. We hit some wires. We ran some wires. We screwed in some stuff. You know what I mean? Today we're going to talk about Bruticus because I want to talk about this MMC one a bit. I want to get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty of this, but I figure we could go through a bit of the history of third-party Bruticuses. They've been around for a while, but before we do, we got to get into some house cleaning. Let's do so. Let me first talk about the Swindle NMC review. Apparently I didn't have the flap right for the combine mode. My bad. Those instructions were very difficult to read for me, and I'm an idiot, so I messed that up. You know, it happens. It doesn't have anything really to do with the stability of it, though, or anything, so functionally my review of it is still intact. It's just instructionally is off in that step. There was someone in the comments that was like, look, the same way you love parts forming, just imagine someone else not loving it and loving all-inclusive. And look, no. You misunderstand. I get that. And I think it's cool too. I think I tried to express that specifically within that video, especially in the final thoughts. I think it's amazing what they've done engineering-wise. The problem is the sacrifices that it makes for it, right? And is that sacrifice worth the cost of entry? You know, it's a cost-benefit analysis of that. That's what I'm getting at with that. And I'm not sure that's a question everyone has to answer on their own, right? But what we've done here is we've taken a bot that looks a certain way at the top half and a different way in the bottom half, and all of it is to incorporate that combiner feature, and then on top of that, it doesn't have full functionality for the combiner feature in terms of range of motion and stuff like that, and on top of that, they give you additional shoes to sit it in. So what is it exactly? What purpose does it serve exactly? And it's more of a question, it's not an attack on the thing, because I think it's a well done thing, but it's more of a question of, what is it? What are we doing? What's the objective? And is that objective being accomplished successfully? And I think that's a decent enough and a rational enough question to raise and then discuss openly. You know, it's kind of my view on that. As far as the 4 Dummies quitting collecting video, there are people that are like, look, man, take it down and transform it once in a while. That'll get you more of the enjoyment. But see, the thing is like, that's one of those relative things, right? Like, the transformation element is the least enjoyable element. Looking at it, like, I just moved all the Marvel stuff from SH Figuarts in here. I haven't been enjoying these. Guess what? I'm enjoying these now because I'm seeing them regularly. I'm seeing them together. It gives me good feels. It gives me nostalgia feels. It's being successful. And so is Transformers. It's just that this is coming out regularly where the Transformers stuff is kind of slowed down. That's on my end. Jisk is having a similar issue, but his is even more kind of magnified because he's only really collecting one line now. And Robert really isn't having that issue because he's buying everything. And that's kind of, it's closely related to the addiction element, I think. Like, there's meat on the bone of that video to really dig into if you'd like to. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview with HTB. I hope they can come back if the channel's still here because all this Copa stuff. I hope that Copacabana. Kappa, as it were. We're still here. You know, hopefully we can come back and revisit it. My goal was to have gone live and talked about Kappa at some point. If I haven't done that, I will do something. December 10th is a big day for the Kappa stuff, so we will revisit it after that. See how it shakes out. This horn is driving my wife crazy, by the way. 100% crazy. If for some reason, my videos stopped showing up all of a sudden, she killed me. With the horn. I guarantee it. The Sit Down Saturday on Menasor. Fascinating to me seeing the people's responses and the changes regarding them. So I'm gonna have a question for this one too. I was reading through it, like literally like laughing and like, dude, I know what you're going through or whatever, like to see where everybody's going. It's so interesting, man. It's such a journey, isn't it? Couple things I have lined up for the future. I'll be having a video going over what I do on Patreon, just for those that are interested. I keep getting a lot of questions on it. It won't be a Sit Down Saturday thing. It'll be like an extra thing. I also got the music video coming. The song will be on iTunes and stuff on the 25th, and then the music video will hit New Year's. I've shown it to a couple people. It's been well received so far, but you don't really know until you get it out there. But it's good. I think it's good. And it was successful in doing what I wanted it to do, so I'm excited about that. And then obviously the making of the video will be, you know, the weekend afterwards per usual. So let's get into today, the Bruticuses. So one of the first third-party offerings was the Bruticus Fans Project upgrade set. This utilized an older Hasbro offering, and it replaced Swindle and Blast Off, which were more of the big complaints among the original set. It offered 2 toys with a G1 nod, but more of a modern aesthetic, which fit in perfectly with the set and made the Bruticus look 1,000 times better, not to mention the Combaticon set itself look 100% more cohesive and 100% more representative of the original designs of of those characters. It was more of a nod. It was a love letter, which is what third party is when it's good. I had the two pieces, the Swindle and the Blast Off, and I didn't get the Hasbro set because I wasn't crazy about the way that it looked, but I liked those two pieces, and I was hoping that later on some other offerings would come down the line and I could kind of flesh that set out. That didn't happen, obviously, so I eventually sold them, but that's a part of history, third party history right there. Like, if there's a third party museum, it's definitely 100% going to be in the hall. And that's what I kind of want to talk about regarding Bruticus. Bruticus has a history of being a game changer in third party, which brings us to our next offering, right? Which was the Warbitron set. Now, when this came out, I remember when the original tees came out, they were full prototypes. Those that have been collecting third party for a while will remember. When that hit, it felt like the world was going a whole new direction. Like, the game had changed overnight. There was a whole bunch of drama surrounding it. Big Bad Toy Store had exclusivity to it for like 90 days. One of my early videos, like discussion videos, honestly, was about that. The set came out, it was stylized, it was unique, it fit the kind of era that we were talking about. It was in that Chugster piece kind of era where it kind of went with Chug, it kind of went with Masterpiece, and if you looked at it a certain way, it would fit whatever your sensibilities were. It was masterfully done in that regard. The combiner was the most stable combiner that we had seen to that day. By today's standards, it's no longer as stable, but it was such a wicked piece. The color palette was beautiful. It had chains hanging off the guns and stuff. Like, it was just cool as shit. The pieces came out fairly regularly. Some of the transformations got a little wonky, but it was a very, very exciting set, and it changed the game for third party. After that, we went from pretty much TFC having a foothold in that market. Then we got kind of Unique Toys threw their hat in the ring with the Abominus set. You know, Feral Rex was around the same era. Like, TFC had major competitors, and all of them were kind of blowing them out of the water at the time. But as the times changed, and the market changed, and the wants and needs changed, and everything started taking a more tune-accurate look, the need for a Bruticus arose again. And this time we had two offerings, one from Zeta and one from Unique Toys. I bought both. I've bought every Bruticus set from third party so far. Well, except for the Legends ones, I suppose. When it was all said and done, the Zeta offered a set that looked like trash in robot mode, with the exception of their Onslaught, which I still think is the best looking Onslaught made today. They looked decent in alt mode, but the alt modes were kind of real world approaches. They weren't necessarily trying to go for the tune accuracy, but the combine mode is where the money shot was, and the combine mode looked gorgeous. I still have it on display. A buddy of mine custom painted it, which means a bit more to me. It's the least stable of their combiners, meaning basically Toy World's Constructor and the Zeta Toys Chronos. However, it's still more stable than every other combiner I've looked at, with the exception of those two. Which brings us to the Unique Toys, which is right there neck and neck in terms of stability. The problem was that the scales have kind of changed, and unless you were fully committed to kind of what Transformission was doing at the time, it didn't really fit with my collection anymore. It was same with a lot of people's collections, because most people had gone in either on the Generation Toy Devastator, leading them down the Unique Toys path to their Bruticus, or they went down the Toy World Devastator, leading them down the path to Zeta Toys Bruticus. And that's kind of where the split happened. But once again, it was the Bruticus offering from third party which really solidified the way that people were going. The Unique Toys Bruticus is one of my most misunderstood reviews. I still think it's a solid combiner. I still think it's a solid offering. I just think it has a lot of in-your-face limitations, especially when juxtaposed next to the Zeta one in combined mode specifically. Also, the fact that the Unique Toys last two releases, their arm bots, which they kind of hid behind the table for a while until people got committed, didn't follow through with the same aesthetic that the original set did, disappointing a lot of people, namely yours truly. Aesthetics is always subjective, but the aesthetics of those arm bots mix match to 1,000 degrees from their initial two releases. Still offering a pretty solid combiner though in the end, and a Bruticus for that selected scale if that scale made sense to you. I think that scale would probably work great with Legends too, by the way, for those that are kind of playing that game. Speaking of Legends, we also had the Iron Factory set. Now this set trailblazed in its own right as well. It wasn't the first Legends combiner from third party, but it did break new barriers and set up new standards as to what to expect from Legends class combiners within third party. Similarly to what Warbitron did to TFC's Devastator, Iron Factory's Bruticus did to DX9's Devastator. Now that's not to say that either one of the Devastators are bad. They were great for their time and they're still good to some extent in some sense. That is to say that after the release of those two Bruticuses, I don't know what the plural is, but the standard changed. And that covers all of the Bruticuses, Dude. I'm making a shirt for that. But that covers all of them up until this point. Which brings us to the MMC offerings. Now, I've had conversations about them recently and some interesting ones and some ones that have kind of changed my opinion. Let me tell you what I like, let me tell you what I don't like. They're offering them all with the inclusive nature of their combiner elements. So the hands, the feet, all of that stuff is self-contained within the piece, which nobody has really done before except for TFC's Devastator, which didn't really do it, but it toyed around with the idea. And on that level, it's incredibly well thought out and smart. The color palette seems to be perfect so far, and I think it's Lazy Aza that we have to thank for that. He did a great job if that's the case. The head sculpts seem to be money across the board for the most part, really encompassing and nailing down the traits of the characters. They also integrate well with the unique toy set if you need to swap a piece here and there. I'm swapping the 2 arm bots with the 2 MMC bots, for example. Now let me tell you what I don't like, and it's tricky. The combined form of this Bruticus looks very reminiscent to me of the G1 toy, which some people will say, well, that's why I'm getting it, and that's 100% cool, but chasing the G1 toy is not what I'm after. The G1 toys for me, when I was a kid, were entirely frustrating. Your Skyfires, your Brawns, your Gears, those type of characters where I was like, this doesn't look anything like the character that I know from the show. Used to drive me nuts, much like this is driving my wife. So I don't want anything to match that aesthetic, I guess with the exception of these Stunticons that I can't get myself away from. But it's not that in and of itself that's the problem with this set, in my opinion. My opinion of this set is that MMC has made an interesting choice in carving out that Ocular Max lane, right? That Studio Ox lane. Studio Ox was a studio that did a lot of the animation for season 1 of Transformers, the G1, and also did a few shows here and there to fill in. Most notably, Call of the Primitives in season 3. It had a very Japanese aesthetic. It had a very kind of almost Gundam vibe to it and looks vastly different from most of the animation used in the rest of the series. I've always applauded them for that because it was a road less traveled. It was a unique avenue to take, much like they took with their reformatted line, where they were like, look, we're doing the comics, we're staying in our lane, this is our avenue. Like, that's what I dug about that. This set does have a bit of the Studio Ox inspirations in there, but by and large, they're going after the G1 aesthetic. Now, the problem with that is that it doesn't match the G1 aesthetic quite well in combine mode. So it reminds me of Gorbash in A Flight of Dragons. I've said this on my Patreon, but have you seen A Flight of Dragons? It's a tremendous it's a tremendous cartoon from the 80s that my buddies often give me a hard time for loving the way I do. But there's a scene in there, there's a dragon, his name is Gorbash, and Gorbash is possessed by this scientist named Peter Dickinson. And as a result, Gorbash has the brain of a scientist with the body of a dragon. So he has to learn how to fly, he has to learn how to breathe fire, he has to learn how to do all the things that a dragon does naturally. He's being instructed by an older dragon named Smeargle, not to be confused with Smeagol. While this is happening, they're being spied on by Omadon, the Red Wizard, who had the voice of James Earl Jones, by the way, which is always the voice of magical things. And Omadon and his dragon Briog are looking through this magic well down to the Gorbash and Smeargle instructional area, the teaching, right? And Smeargle is like, you know, you fill your belly with gas, it makes you lighter than air, and blah, blah, blah. And Omadon starts laughing, and he says, a dragon that doesn't know how to be a dragon. And that's kind of how I feel about this set. It's a Studio Ox set that doesn't know how to be a Studio Ox set. It's a G1 set that doesn't know how to be a G1 set. It's a G1 toy set that doesn't know how to be a G1 toy set. It's an all-inclusive combiner that doesn't know how to be an all-inclusive combiner. It's a parts-forming combiner that doesn't know how to be a parts-forming combiner. But, let me say that to say this. I think there's incredible charm in it, in the fact that all of the robots will line up for the most part, with the exception of Onslaught, to make a pretty good Toon bot shell. I think all of the alt modes line up to make a pretty good Toon / real world alt mode set. And I think the combined mode looks good as an ode to the G1 toy set. So, what do we have? The G1 toy set, the Toon set, and the real worldy set for alt mode, all combined into one purchase depending upon what you want for each mode. And there is a charm to that. There is something smart about that and tangible to that. There is a clever nature to it all. And all of it has a sprinkle or a seasoning of Studio Ox amongst it. So I don't want to say that I think the set is trash, because I don't. I think it's interesting. I think it's clever. I just don't think it's focused enough for me. But what will it be? Another historical offering in the third-party Bruticus history. So my question for this week to you, if you are all in on this set, if this is your Bruticus, this is your masterpiece scale Combaticon set, is what is it about it that you find most alluring? exploring? What is bringing you to it? Is it the G1 aspect? Is it the toy aspect? Is it the Combaticon tune aspect? What aspect of it is bringing? Is the all-inclusive nature, or the fact that the parts forming shoes go in it? What aspect of it is bringing you to the pre-order button? What specifically about it is grabbing you? And to be clear, I respect all of those answers. I'm just curious what the majority seem to be. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.